Hey everybody. I want to thank you all again for continuing to listen to the podcast. I did get some email and established a Facebook for us. So again, our Facebook page is just facebook.com/the HBCU band experience. And I also have an email address. It is the HBCUband experience @gmail.com. So if you're interested in, requesting an interview, anybody you think I may want to talk to, maybe even if it's yourself, just drop me a line on either the Facebook page or the email. So today's episode of the podcast is with my friend Stan Holloway. So a couple of episodes back, we had my friend Rashida, who is a female percussionist in a mostly male section. And so I kind of wanted to flip it the other way and have someone who is a guy playing in a predominantly female section. And Stan's story is really interesting. I got to find out some new things that I didn't know before. And so I really think you will be interested in hearing his angle, being that guy who plays the piccolo. So here is my talk with Stan Holloway. I'm here with my friend Stan Holloway. He is a former member of the Marching 100 at Florida A&M University. I guess you're always a member. You're just not currently marching. But he's an alum, and he played the piccolo, which is really interesting because, Stan's a guy. And I just always wanted to know what it was like, just like when I interviewed Rashida a while back about her being a female in a predominantly male section and being section leader. I kind of wanted to know the reverse of that with Stan. So how you doing?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's so funny because, again, it's a case of knowing somebody for so long. It's like now that I'm recording our conversations, it feels kind of weird, but I want us to be just relaxed and talk. So, okay. So why don't you start off by telling me, like, where's your hometown, and what was it? What made you? When did you start playing the flute? I'm going to assume the flute first. Was that your first instrument? Yeah, talk about that a little.
Okay, so cool beans. My hometown, I'm originally from Columbia, South Carolina. And my first instrument, well, I guess my first wind instrument was the flute. I originally started playing the violin. I was really into strings, and my dad was a real good bass player. Now, I didn't want to play bass. I want to be the opposite of my dad, so I picked up the violin. But, I ran into a situation back then. I was walking to school in middle school, and I was carrying my violin. Me and my friend, we walked to school every day, and these cops pulled us over. And he said, "Hey, what do you have in the case?" And I was like, "My instrument." And he just kind of looked me up and down. I was like, "I don't believe you. Open it up." So I opened up my case, and I kind of went through. I took my instrument, I laid everything on the ground. He was like, "Well, let me get out in my car and look." So he got out of the car, and he looked, and he broke my violin. I had everything like over the ground. And he's like, "Well, I guess you don't have any drugs on you, so I'm gonna leave you alone." And he just drove off. So right
when was this?
This was in middle school. This was in the 6th grade. This was in 6th grade. It was in middle school.
Wow.
So I said, I don't want to play that ever again. So I didn't go to string class that day. I took my instrument. I was so embarrassed because I really, at that point, I thought it was my fault. So I hid my instrument in a closet. And my mom was making payments on it. So she was like, "Why is this in your closet?" "I don't want to play it anymore." And, I told her what happened. She said, "Well, I understand." She was mad that I wasn't playing it. She was paying for it. So I went back to school the next day. I went to the band teacher and said, "Hey, I want to play another instrument." His name was Ken Cheeks at Alcorn Middle School. He said, "Well, let's see what you got." So he pulled out a bunch of mouthpieces, put some brass mouthpieces, of course, stereotypical guy, he gonna play a brass instrument. I buzzed on a few mouthpieces. He gave me a clarinet mouthpiece. I hated it. He said, "Well, try this flute mouthpiece." I'm like, "A flute?" He was like, "Yeah, a flute." He gave me a flute, and I played the tones. Like, "You're gonna play flute?" I was like, "Oh, okay." Went home, told my mom. She's like, "If I go buy this dang old instrument, you start playing it, we gonna fight." So I had no choice but to, kind of keep playing it. So that was the start of me playing the flute. Was in 6th grade, and just kind of went uphill from there.
Wow. I had no idea. First of all, I'm gonna need a minute to just digest the whole police incident
Right,
and
right.
how that like really changed the trajectory of you. You know, you could have been like a champion violinist by now. Oh my goodness.
Right. And I was really faced with that choice. Growing up in a neighborhood that I did, we say that music saves people's lives. That music really saved my life, because if I hadn't made a choice to go back to the band room and talk to my band director about, picking up an instrument, I wouldn't have done music at all. And I would just been probably in the streets, my neighborhood doing something else. So, I'm glad I made that decision. I had that fork in the road at 12 or 13 to say, I'm gonna go do music so I can do something positive with myself. And here I am.
Wow, that is amazing. Okay. Well, let me just go ahead and ask like when you switched to the flute, did you
Mhm.
get any flack from like your classmates or anything? Like did people look at you like, what is going on? Like this guy is playing
Yeah,
the flute.
it's very stereotypical. I was always a big guy, so I was this big guy that was on the flute with a bunch of girls, and I
Hmm.
got picked on, and at such a young age, I don't want to say I was oblivious, but that's when people started questioning my sexuality. Well, he's
Hmm.
gay. And I was like, what does that mean? I'm playing an instrument. Like, I was so oblivious to it. It didn't bother me, but the more they kept saying, I'm like, why are we having this conversation about it? So, I got picked on, and it made my self-esteem, a little low. But it was this point in school where we were playing, I think it was called Crazy Clock. It was called Crazy Clock. And we had 8 flutes, and he decided, well, let's do a flute solo. And guess who he picked? Me.
Yes.
So when I played it at the concert, by myself in front of all those people, the people stood up and clapped. I was like, that inner feeling I had of accomplishment, that somebody's saying like, good job. I say, you know what? I can care less what they say about me and playing my instrument. I'm going to be good at what I do. And then again, after that, it just went all uphill after that.
Oh wow, that's an awesome story. That's good. I hope that like inspires somebody. So let so you get to high school
Mm-hmm.
and so like how was that? Was that just pretty much standard experience in the band in high school? Did you come from like a core style band or high stepping?
Well, it was more the same, but it kind of took like a shift. It was a little bit more aggressive. In high school, I was not. I was in a. Well, we actually did both. We high step into the course. I was a combination. Keenan High School in Columbia, South Carolina. We did a
Yeah.
combination of both. I actually got the band camp late, so they was already. I don't even remember why I got there late. Yeah, I don't even remember, but I got there late. So my freshman year was kind of. I was an alternate, so that didn't help my esteem at all. And it wasn't because I couldn't play or anything like this, because I got there late. They already learned the show, and I don't think I was good enough to shake somebody off the tree and get a spot.
Hmm.
And I didn't understand what that meant at that time. I later found out, but as far as like the stereotype, well, he plays shoot, he's gay, blah blah blah. I was a big guy, got picked on. It's pretty typical. It's just a lot more aggressive. It's high school comes in, people's personality change, they start to be a little bit more boisterous. But again, going on, got the symphonic band. And I was in symphonic band, and it's about 12 of us, and he was going down the line, play this, play that, and I played it. Okay, well, you come from the 10th chair, you go to the first chair because you play better than her. So I was really,
What?
oh, yeah, that was really the start of it. And that's when I really experienced kind of like, well, not kind of like the reverse sexism, coming from the female to me,
Hmm.
as a male. Now, I really don't have an alpha male, kind of personality, but back then, it's kind of, I just want to play my instrument. I don't care about anybody's personality. I just want to play. So through high school, it was probably a little bit more difficult, but I got through that by playing more aggressive. I got better and better as I went on. I expressed myself through my instrument. So you can talk about me, but let's get on this horn. Let's see who got it now. And
Hmm.
they wouldn't bother me at that. So after my sophomore year, then my junior year, I was section leader. I became band president. I had more of a voice. I got more involved in the band. Then it was, oh, that's just Stan. It wasn't like the guy that plays the flute. It was Stan. And I just happened to play the flute and I was good at it. And that's all it was.
Right. Okay. Okay. So FAMU, let's talk about that. What made you want to go to FAMU and, talking about, your transition to college?
So I didn't go to school right away. I stayed home to help my mom out, and I went to culinary school. Uh,
Right.
went to culinary school. I was supposed to go to FAMU in '98. Traditionally you leave school, high school, you go straight to college. I was supposed to go in '98, but I took about 2 years, and I got there in 2000. During those 2 years, just a little bit of a story. I was still kind of on the fence about where I wanted to go. I always liked FAMU. I mean, that was really in the back of my head. I was going to FAMU, but I was like, well, what are my other options? Naturally, well, once you got South Carolina State, I was like, that's home. I'll go
Right.
home. Had A&T on the brain, had Norfolk on the brain. I even had Johnson C. Smith on the brain. Back then. But this one, my final decision was I went to South Carolina State for like this jazz band kind of concert, and they was doing the typical recruiting, talking to people and what do you play, where you come from, and I was standing in the midst of all of them. Nobody had any instrument. We're just standing there talking. And he's like, "Well, what do you play?" I said, "I play flute." He said, "Well, I don't need you." He went to the next one. "What do you play?" "Oh, I play trumpet." "Oh yeah, we're gonna get you a special scholarship."
What?
Does my musical talents, doesn't grace me a scholarship? I can't come because I play flute or a piccolo or whatever. And my question wasn't answered. It's kind of left unanswered. I didn't really talk to anyone about that. It's like that was the last feeling that I had. I was like, well, I'm definitely not going there. FAMU came up. And I was like, well, I've been to band camp at FAMU. I understand that there are people there that I looked up to. I looked up to them not knowing who they were. I just saw them in performance. I always saw those male clarinet players, piccolo player. I saw all of them, flags. I saw all of them. And I figured, well, man, that's a place I can go where I can be just stand that I play the piccolo. It had nothing to do. That was important. Woodwinds are very prominent at FAMU. So I said, well, I'm going to choose FAMU. Went off to FAMU.
That makes a lot of sense. Representation does matter.
It matters. And, I felt not that, I was real strong on A&T. I was real strong on A&T because I knew a lot of people there naturally because a lot of people from my high school went there. We always went to their homecoming. And Norfolk was like the band I first saw in '97. They impressed me when they came to South Carolina State. So, and, their woodwinds are, were pretty good. So I was like,
Hmm.
okay, I can go there. I go there. But FAMU was at the top of my list, and I just happened to get a scholarship. And I talked to Dr. White, and I was down there.
Okay. So you went to their camp as a high schooler, their camp. Okay. So how was that? Did you, I don't want to say culture shock, but just going from like a smaller band to having so many people at that camp. How was that?
It was a culture shock because I'd never been in a band that large. We maybe had 100, students in my high school band. And then you go to band camp, and it's 550. So I was like, what? I mean, just seeing it's one thing seeing it on a tape, but being a part of it is a totally different experience. I mean, I couldn't hear myself play the
Hmm.
first time. And I thought I was pretty loud, as a piccolo player. I couldn't hear myself play. So it was a culture shock just being a part of it. It was one thing seeing it, but being a part of it is totally different. Uh,
Okay.
and then, your parents always tell you, there's someone out there that's always better than you. And when I went to camp, I thought I was good. I was the best.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a bunch of females out in Florida that was way better than me, and that kind of forced me to you need to step your game up a little bit more before you make your decision. So taking that and going to FAMU, my freshman year, as a male piccolo player, it was challenging at first. Naturally, the same stereotypical stuff. People didn't know me. I think there's one other person in the band that was from my same high school, Kenneth Ayers. We both went to the same high school. We went down there together. So only one other person knew me besides the people who knew me from that came to camp, and it was a little bit more aggressive.
Right.
It was a little bit more aggressive.
Like more intense.
Yeah, it's more intense with the teasing and picking. I was a freshman, And then, my first day, Dr. White, I love Dr. White. He made this grand speech about, freshmen aren't separate from the band. You come out to the field and you wear whatever you want to wear. You don't have to wear a white shirt. I took that letter like, I don't have to wear a white shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So I showed up in my high school band fit. I had a gold shirt that said Martin Keenan Railroad Band on it and some blue shorts. I had blue and gold FUBUs and everything. I showed up, and guess what? All the other freshmen white shirts. So I'm the only one out of 150 freshmen that had on that fit.
Oh no! So wait a minute. Why didn't you get the memo? What was going on there?
I got the memo, but I think I was kind of like, I'm going to try the system because Dr. White said I didn't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that wasn't the underlying. So I showed up and I was the only one. So all eyes were on me across the whole band. Yeah, all the freshmen looking at me, all the upperclassmen, band staff looking at me. Big guy played piccolo. So that was kind of self-inflicting.
Mm-hmm.
On my birthday. But my path at FAMU, especially my freshman year was a little tough, especially musically. I can say that openly because, like I said, there's someone always better than you. When I got there, I knew 2 marches. That was Them Basses and Purple Carnival.
Mm-hmm.
And we played a different version of Purple Carnival than I played at FAMU. So when I got there, I said, what is this on this music? It's a bunch of trills. I mean, I literally stared at music. I said, I don't know this. And all the other girls around me were bred in Florida. Mm. Every single march that FAMU played, they can play up and down and backwards. And I was sitting like, bloop, bloop, bloop. I couldn't do it. So my first year was challenging, being a male piccolo player, and I would say I wasn't the best, but I wasn't as good as everybody else. So my freshman year was very challenging.
Okay. Wow. So let's talk about that first year as far as games go. I know you probably want to mention the Florida Classic because that's the end of everything. But are there any games that stood out like your first year that you're like, just any games that stood out that are memorable? 3
in particular. Versus A&T. I remember that game.
In what year?
Was it 2000?
It must have been 2000.
I think it was. It's starting to run together now. Jeez, I think it was A&T.
I mean, that's 20 years ago.
Yeah, jeez. Well, no, I'll take it back a little. I remember South Carolina State was memorable because that was my first game marching against my peers in high school. So I got to see them across the field. We got to, I really couldn't talk, but I got to see them, So I remember that first performance against them in Jacksonville. The next one would be the Southern game. That was an experience in itself. That was my first time in a really intense band battle at Florida A&M. I mean, A&T we always had a good, camaraderie. So I would say it was lax, but it was good, Well, at Southern, it was intense from the time we put on the campus with people throwing trash at us till we got off the bus and people throwing stuff at us from the snake walk to the stadium to the first note blowing, going back and forth with Southern. And, they were, I would say, were not the greatest, but they're not the usual Southern that we would typically see. There's a little, I wouldn't say weak, but it wasn't the typical Southern. I guess it was down a down year, what was going on there.
So wait a minute, you were getting stuff thrown at you in your home stadium?
No, this is in Baton Rouge.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was about to say.
No. I didn't have nothing like that in Tallahassee, but at their stadium, yes. So again, that was the first intense, band battle I had, at FAMU, and it was a good experience. People have their opinions about it, and I'll say that we proverbially put our foots on their butts, and it was a good game. It was a good game.
It's always an apples and oranges thing when I think of FAMU playing Southern. I always just think of it as apples and oranges, Yeah,
I like both. I actually like the Southern now, the current Southern, 2011, to now versus the previous one, where I can appreciate what they do, and when they go against FAMU. Now my mind's a little bit more open, so it's not like, I'm all FAMU, there's nothing they can do that impress me. No, they do some stuff that make me turn my head.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Kind of apples and oranges. But
Mm-hmm.
now back then, that was my first intense game, and then the second will be the Florida Classic. You know,
So tell me, like, I think I know what's up, but I can't assume that everybody's listening knows what's up. I mean, I know y'all cross, and yeah.
Yeah, that was the official, crossing of into the Marching 100. I made it into the Marching 100 as that game, and that feeling, I guess they deprive you from it so much throughout the season. You're a freshman, you stay in your place, and it's like they hum the carry over your head when you get to the Florida Classic and you've been hunting. So it's like our mouths like foaming, like we gotta get there. So that's why the shows are always so intense at the Florida Classic, because you got a large population of the band, the freshmen, that's like, this is it. This is our time to, cross, into the band. So it was a great experience. It was a good experience,
And that was probably the largest crowd you've played in front of, you think, at the Florida Classic?
That was the largest class. That was the largest crowd up until that point, because we had a few classes before and some home games, but that was memorable. You soon we walked in the stadium, it was filled with 60,000 people, at pregame, and then it turned to 70 and 75, and to hear them roaring and applause, before we got on the field. I mean, back then, the only thing we had to do was flap our cape and everybody would go crazy, So just to kind of hear that and see that was a great experience, back then. So yeah, that was very memorable. Very memorable.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to sophomore year. Like, when did you become section leader?
That was my sophomore year, and
okay.
I honestly, I didn't plan on being section leader that soon. Actually, we do like applications. We do an interview process down there. We try out. When I filled out my application, I filled out rank sergeant. I was very humble, and I wanted to work on my craft and my playing so I can be a section leader. I didn't think I was there yet. So I applied for rank sergeant, and then they always announced, well, at least back then, the section leaders and rank sergeants the section leaders and drum majors and leaders, awesome leaders at commencement. So he was making an announcement, and he called my name. He called the section leader name first, Rayson Concellos, the section leader, back then, my freshman and that year. And they said, well, section leader Piccolo is Stanley Holloway. And I was like, what? Excuse me? And everybody turned their heads and looked at me. And I was like, okay. And then from that moment on, the heat got turned up because, I was in the front of the rank instead of the back or in the middle. I was in the front of the way. That means people was looking to me for leadership. So I really had to work really hard over that summer before band camp to work on my marching, what I look like in front of them, and my playing. I mean, it was all eyes on me now because, of course, it's the reverse sexism. You got the females who are like, I should have been section leader. He shouldn't be section leader, blah, 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 blah. And they tried me really hard. I mean, they tried me hard, and again, my personality, I'm not going to be combative verbally or physically. I'm going to play. I'm going to show you through my playing. And the minute they heard me play at that level, everybody left me alone,
Okay.
And I became, again, finding my place. I was just Stan who played piccolo. There wasn't none of the stuff that came with it. I was just Stan who played piccolo. They already knew my personality. They already knew me as a person. And then my playing and my leadership kind of came to build there. So, and again, my neo year, my sophomore year was very challenging. Again, I had another challenge because I was a leader in front of a section of really good players and marchers, and who didn't think I deserved to be up there. So every day, every week, every game, I was constantly proving myself that I can do this, and I deserve to be up here, just like you would deserve to be up here. So that was challenging.
So this is my personal opinion. I think the section that is most on the hot seat in FAMU's band is the piccolo section, because y'all are featured so much, and especially in Stars and Stripes Forever. I know the director had y'all stand up during the trio and all that. Like, I just felt like y'all are even much more under the microscope. But what I think is remarkable about this is that, like, in 1 year, you went from like somebody that didn't really know their music as well as it could be, all the way to section leader in one
Yeah,
year.
yeah, that's my story. That's my legacy. We have it on our shirts as the legacy continues. That means something. That's my legacy. That I never when it, kind of backtracking a little bit back to my freshman year, it became really more eye-opening at the South Carolina State game. Dr. White pulled the audible with standing concert band formation. He said, "Fly the Bumblebee." I was like, "Wait, I don't think I practiced that." Yep. And I stood there, and I got a really good ear, so I can figure it out on the way, but I didn't know it.
Mm.
After that, I said, "Oh no, he will not get me again." And I went up to the fourth floor of the band building, of the music building, and practiced every day, all marching and Fly the Bumblebee. And sure enough, about a week later, he said, "Fly the Bumblebee." He said, "Nope." He started going down the line, and he got to me, and I played it. I said, "You will never ever get me again."
That's
So,
right.
so my playing elevated. Every year I was at FAMU, it got better and better and better and better. So
Okay.
I can't be as arrogant to say that I was the greatest player my entire time at FAMU. That's not true. I had to build to the player that I am now. Even back then. So.
Hmm.
Like to your point, we were featured a lot, the woodwinds in particular. So I had no choice but to learn that music because we were right there in the front all the time. So
Well, wow. So when did you do KK Sign? What year was that?
that was spring 2002, during my sophomore year.
Okay, okay. So when you came back for, like your junior and senior year, you're like the big man on campus now. Like in the band room, you
Yeah,
section leader, you saw, I mean,
people knew who I was. You said my name. People knew who I was, not only at FAMU but in other places. I'll never forget. I went to Howard's homecoming one year, and I was there just having fun. Like, "You're Stan. You're the Piccolo Section Leader FAMU." I said, "I am." Nice.
that's what I kind of knew you as, though, honestly. Like, that's back in the day, that's what I knew you as. And I'm like, oh, that's why I want to have you on here, because I think it's a very unique situation, a good situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you did a lot of mentoring, didn't you, when
I
you were
did.
in leadership positions, right?
Yeah, it started band camp my sophomore year when I first became assistant section leader. Some of the band campers were tasked with making a story to get scholarships. Talk about who's your inspiration, who's the person that you look up to. And one camper in particular, her name is Nicole Horton. She made a piece and wrote this whole almost a dissertation about how she looked up to me. And I was like, did I make that much of an impact on you when you came in? She was like, yeah, you did. And
Mm-hmm.
she laid it out, and I was almost bring a tear to my eye. I was genuinely I felt some kind of way, because I was like, I really made an impact on someone's life through my playing and through my personality and through my leadership. And she later on came to FAMU, and that's like my kid. That's that's my kid. I can pick up the phone and call her right now. We're very close. And so that moment right there, I kind of took that and wanted to mentor to all the students who came up, not only in the piccolo section, but, throughout the band. But I did most of it throughout the piccolo section. And, I was tasked, well, we were tasked with, I'm going to say as openly as I can without opening another can of worms. We were tasked with being a good section, being good players without the hazing.
Mm-hmm.
What did it look like? I was 240, 50 pounds in, trying to haze or do whatever to females who were smaller than me. So I had to find other ways to get my point across, to get them good at what they're doing without all the extra. Because we was the only section in the entire band that didn't have a section. There was no phi, no nothing in that section. It was just the piccolos.
Okay. So
So
no names, no
well,
like.
there was, it died out in '95 and never came back again. Well, it came back. Well, that's another story. But during my time, it wasn't there. So there
Mm-hmm.
was no section. There was really no, I guess, proverbially say, there was no repercussions of not doing good. It's like, come to the house at 7 or whatever. That other stuff came. It was none of that. It was just what are you going to go tell Dr. White? I made you play Rolling Thunder repeatedly and it made your hands hurt. Please go tell him. I'll go with you. If you give me a white letter, then I will take the L on that. But no, we had to do that through music. So, that mentorship, going through the students was, a powerful thing for me.
Okay. So you finished at FAM, and then you weren't ever a band director, were you? But I know you do arranging. I know you do that.
I always did things behind the scenes. I started off in music, and I don't know how I got off track. And I won't say I didn't have an interest in it, but I didn't have an interest in it to be a band director. I just wanted to do it. So I got a good paying job, right out of FAMU, retail. And I've always had a really good paying job since then. So I never fully went back to it. I always did things behind the scenes. I did drill writing, I did band camps, I did arranging, some composing, I did private lessons, all behind the scenes, but I never took a title to say, hey, I'm Stan, the band director of XYZ. I just never did it. Now, late in the game, I'm doing that, but no, I never done that before.
So weren't you, okay, so don't get me lying here, but you were you had a master's degree or working towards a master's degree in music?
Yes, I had one in management and leadership. Then I have a bachelor's in music production, and now I'm working on a master's in music education. I should be finishing here in December. I'm working on my thesis now.
That's awesome. Okay, so what's your thesis on?
Continuing music education during the pandemic.
Okay. You gotta be appropriate. Okay.
Yeah. And as soon as I put that title here, Prudent immediately said, get right on it. So that's my thesis. I gotta do a 125-page thesis. I'm probably at page 65 right now, but
okay.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. Well, I wish you the absolute best of luck. And so I want to go ahead and wrap it up here. But before we do, I want to ask you if you have any parting words of advice or just some parting words to just, kind of wrap up your experience in the music world.
My advice would be, I guess, to anybody who chooses to pick up an instrument, don't be defined by a stereotype. Be defined by the person that you are who's playing the instrument. You have females who play brass instruments, and you can't play that. No, you play whatever you want to play. Whatever you feel in your heart, that's what you should do. Be the person that you are through that instrument. It doesn't matter if you're male or female on the opposite instrument, very stereotypical. Don't follow the stereotype. If you don't feel like you want to play that instrument, play what you feel like you want to play. I have lots of friends and lots of colleagues who would play the opposite, quote unquote, who go against the status quo, and they're great at what they do. So, make that your superpower. You know what I'm saying? And make that your superpower. Go against the grain, and be great at it. There's nothing more fulfilling than being great at something people think you can't do or you shouldn't do. That's the greatest accomplishment. You slap it right in their face.
All right, band heads, that concludes my interview with Stan Holloway. I hope y'all have a great week. I'm going to go and enjoy some of my virtual homecoming activities now. Take care. You have listened to the HBCU Band Experience with Christy Walker. Interviews and editing conducted by yours truly, Dr. Christy Walker. The music is District 4 by Kevin MacLeod, and you can find this podcast on HBCUbandexperience.podbean.com. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Take care.